Hey, and welcome to today's conversation. Today, we're going to be diving into the language of the soul and how you can start to decode what the messages that your soul is giving you right here and right now in your life. So, welcome to the Awakening Her podcast. I'm your host, Deidre Sirianni, and today we're going to be diving into the conversation around your soul and starting the beginning steps of understanding how your soul is communicating to you. So this has been something that is a bit of a foundational piece of my work. I love talking about it, and it's completely changed my life. So years ago, when about 8 years ago, I was standing in my kitchen and I was putting my fingers through my hair, and I realized that something fell off. And so I raced to the bathroom to try to figure out what's going on. And I put my phone behind my head, and I'm angling the phone, the camera, the back of my head with the mirror, trying to figure out what's going on. And that's when I realized I had a bald spot. And I thought to myself, how do I fix this? How did this happen? Clearly, the universe is trying to tell me something because it's going after my hair. And so I go back to my kitchen, I sit down for a moment, and I started to have all these flashbacks of all these moments in time when I didn't listen to intuitive nudges that I was getting. And I had this realization that my soul had been talking to me through all of these symptoms, which had included autoimmune disease. So I had 4 different types of autoimmune disease that the doctors could not help me with. I had chronic pain in my neck and shoulders to the point where my massage therapist actually fired me. She let me go. She couldn't help me anymore. And I had symptoms of depression, anxiety attacks often, and I just did not feel good. But from the outside looking in, I looked healthy. I looked happy. And so years ago, about 8 or so years ago, I made the decision to really start getting radically honest with myself, having courage, and then taking massive inspired action in my life. And that's exactly what I did. And coming back to the language of the soul, there was a body of work that I was introduced to, 5, 6 years prior, that I was integrating in some areas of my life, but other areas of my life, I wasn't. And that's why I believe I was getting very sick, and also how I was able to heal 3 of those 4 autoimmune diseases within just 3 months. Okay, 3 autoimmune diseases gone, all of the symptoms gone within 3 months of implementing the work that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Completely gone. Depression gone, anxiety attacks gone, a lot of food sensitivities gone. I used to have a lot of stomach aches often, gone, as well as a lot of other physical challenges that I was facing. So this work of listening to the language of the soul and implementing into our life can change it. But before we dive into a story that I want to share with you a little bit more around what the language of the soul is and how you can start implementing in your life and how it was introduced to me, I first want to say that, this was over a decade ago. Probably 14 years ago is actually when I started learning the language of the soul and doing this work. And for my healing journey, my transformations that I've had, it's very much been about listening to the language of the soul, and my body has healed itself. And from a more mature place, a more balanced place, I also see the importance of detoxing and your environment and food and all of these other protocols that can support us on our healing journey. So if you're someone who's listening to this right now and you're like, I'm struggling with, chronic fatigue or a chronic illness of some sort, the language of the soul, this work can definitely support you in your healing journey, but it might not be able to do everything for you depending on how dis-ease is manifesting in your body. So I just wanted to preface that as the results that I've got have been absolutely incredible, and it's supported many people on their healing journey. However, everyone's healing journey is different. But if you go back to the foundations of the language of the soul and you do the free process that I have for you, the link is below this show, on actually taking yourself through some processes to understand how your soul is communicating to you right now. And if you can take massive action, this is the most important part, taking massive action on what the soul is actually telling you, that's where a lot of the symptoms and changes will happen. So if you have tried everything on your healing journey, And things haven't been working, this might be the missing puzzle piece for you. Or if you're just listening and you're looking for more guidance and learning how to trust yourself and your body more, this episode will give so much value in how you can start to decode the language of the soul. So let's talk a little bit about what the language of the soul is. So the soul lives in our body and our spirit is outside of our body. Okay, so the soul is within the body. So the physical body is very much a manifestation of the soul in many different ways. And I'm actually going to be sharing a little bit later in this episode about how you can start to decode the language of the soul and specific things you can look at, as well as give you that free resource to actually do a process and gain some higher insight right away. So the physical body is the body of the soul. Isn't that cool? And then the spirit is something totally different. And maybe I'll do an episode just on spirit and how that shows up externally when I do work with people, whether it's in their business or personal coaching space and all of that. I'm able to see what's going on in the different elements of the body and also outside and what's out of balance, and also bring in the messages of your spirit as well as your soul, and oftentimes the physical manifestation of challenges, disease, pain, all of those things. Really, a lot of the time comes down to a part of you that you have suppressed or pushed away or that you're not listening to. And when we give that part of you, your soul's expression, a voice and a space to be heard, and then you back that by action, so much transformation can happen. It is absolutely incredible. So as I mentioned, I've had some huge transformations, people around me have, and also people have taken programs from me and worked with me. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about that. So about 14 years ago, I was a yoga teacher. I went to school for broadcast journalism, and then I ended up moving to Vancouver, BC for a guy that I ended up marrying at the time. And I got into yoga just as kind of one of those jobs that was like an in-between job. It was an in-between job until I found my next radio gig or television gig, right? Because I had this big vision of wanting to be on TV, on the radio, and my big dream was actually to work for country music television. I don't even know if that exists anymore. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but that was my big vision at the time. So I got into yoga, not really thinking too much of it, and then it turned into an 8-year career. Okay, 8-year career until I had a wake-up call and shifted more into what I do now. So at the time of being full on, the yoga girl that I was, a friend of mine that was, a couple decades older than me invited me to attend this workshop with her. So I have my yoga mat. I'm wearing probably most likely bubble pink, gum pink top and pants, bright colors. And I roll into this warehouse. I have my yoga mat, and I remember walking into this warehouse and looking around and quickly realizing, I don't think I'm at a yoga workshop. I'm not really sure what I said yes to. And so I look in the room, it's this big warehouse, and people are in a big circle on chairs, those little foldable chairs. People are sitting on those. And then there's this woman in the middle, at the center of the circle or at the point of the circle. And she has long white hair that goes all the way down to the ground. And I just remember walking in. I think I was the last person to get there. I got there maybe 5 minutes before the start time. And I walk in and I'm like, this is not a yoga class. What are we doing here? You know what I'm saying? And so I walk in and I put my yoga mat down, and there's one chair available, and it's directly in front of this woman in the circle. So I sit down. I'm kind of looking around, just kind of seeing who's there and what's going on. And I just remember feeling, I don't think I'm supposed to be here right now, but my friend was there. So, okay. I'm gonna sit down and see what this is all about. And so the woman, who looked like a witch, like what you would see in a movie that is portraying a witch, long white hair, big laugh, really strong energy. Her hair was so long it went down to the ground as she sat down. I don't know if she's ever cut her hair before. And one by one, she kept going around. She was going around the circle and asking these women, how do you feel? How do you feel? And so one woman after the other burst into tears or started screaming or yelling or just like these really big emotions with no logical reason behind. Like I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was that as soon as this woman asked each person how they were feeling, each of these women would cry, yell, or do something huge. And so I remember looking at the exit sign, okay, the exit for the door I walked in from to get to this place. And I was like, how do I escape this room? How do I get out of here without anyone seeing me? And that was impossible because I was literally in the center of the circle, right? I was right in front of this woman. And so she kept going around. One woman after another would have these huge, dramatic, emotional breakdowns. And then she got to me and she said, how do you feel in your body? And there was no introduction. She just went straight into the work. I didn't even know what was going on. Again, a warehouse, middle of nowhere. Thought I signed up for a yoga class. I'm wearing a neon colors and I'm in my early 20s. I think I'm like 21. Okay. And I'm smiling and I'm like, I feel good. And she's like, try again. I feel pretty good. Try again, she says. I feel my feet on the ground. Try again. I feel my sit bones on the chair. Try again. It was so uncomfortable. It was so uncomfortable. It was so uncomfortable and so quiet in that warehouse when it was my turn to speak or share about how I was feeling, that if you were to drop a pin in the room, you'd be able to hear it. And there was also this collective energy of, who is this chick? She is doing this wrong. And so after, a few more times of this woman asking me how I felt and me saying good or, mentioning parts of my body, she's like, we'll come back to you later. And I was just like, so happy that's over. And so a couple hours went by, the workshop completed, and I walked out of that warehouse as fast as I could. I didn't sprint. It was a quick walk. You know, those quick walks, it's like a jog, it's a walk, but you look like you're walking, but you might as well be jogging because you're going really, really fast. That was me. I was out of there as fast as I could after the workshop because I was like, this doesn't feel good. I don't know what I just did there. I don't know who these people are, but this is not for me. I don't belong. So as I'm walking out the door, almost home free, my friends, this voice comes out of me, okay, and says, when is the next circle? I was just as surprised as everyone else. Everyone's like, she's coming back? Like, what? I was like, did I just say that? And I started to come back week after week. And this woman that was running this workshop or this session was a shaman, and she ended up being the very first shaman that I ended up studying with over 14 years ago, which is wild to think about. And honestly, a lot of this work kicked my ass. Okay. When I was 21, I was not in tune with my emotions. I had this really strong coping mechanism that really just showed up as me being good all the time. I always had a smile on my face. I was always like, high vibes, everything's great, never talked about anything that was negative. And that came from, a wound of I need to be perfect. I need to be happy all the time or I'm not going to be loved, like all this stuff, right? That I wasn't even aware of. I was so out of tune with my emotions that I was, first of all, afraid of what am I doing in this warehouse? What is going on? What is this witch doing to these women, right? Why is everyone crying and yelling? I don't understand what's going on. Who is this woman? And then through doing this work of working with her and studying with her for a year, over 14 years ago, that's where I learned the language of the soul. And so what we started to do is she started to share how different parts of our bodies usually represent different messages. And I still believe this to be true to a certain extent, but I have a process that I'm sharing with you below this episode if you want to go through it and actually connect deeper with your soul and get the higher wisdom and the message that your soul wants you to have so that you can take massive inspired action in your life. And the cool thing about it is you can work with something challenging in your life that's going on as an example, or you can work with a symptom that you have, because they often go hand in hand. And that will make more sense when you access that free offering that I have below. So as I was working with this woman, we would do a lot of work on different areas of the body and just tuning into what's going on for people. And I remember this one time I was working with one of the women in the group, and I was like, I just keep seeing you being strangled. I don't know why. I just have a vision of you being strangled. And she shared with me I was actually seeing what happened to her in the past. And so this is roughly around the time when a lot of my spiritual gifts really came online, when I was about 2021. And I started to have these psychic gifts and these visions and all of that. And also, going back to what we're talking about now, is I start to understand what the language of the soul is. So the body, as I mentioned earlier, is the house of the soul. This is where the soul lives, right? So if the body's happy, usually the soul's happy. If the soul's happy, usually the body's happy. They go hand in hand, which is why our physical health is really important, because if we have a healthy body, it's great for the soul. And if we really tune into the soul and we do things that feel good for the soul, then usually we also have health and vitality in the body. So they go hand in hand. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, this might be the missing piece on your healing journey, or just in your intuitive development space. Or it could be something that's complementing things that you're already doing, right? Or you may have to do a bit of a couple things in order to really expand your vitality and health. But again, this specific episode is not about health and vitality. I mean, everything kind of is if you think about it, but it's really about the language of the soul. So 8 years ago, I healed myself of 3 out of 4 autoimmune diseases, chronic pain, and anxiety and depression just from doing this work. So highly recommend checking the freebie below and doing that process. So let's talk a little bit about how and what different parts of the body represent. Okay, so this woman that I studied with, her name's Premasuda. She talks about certain parts of the body and how they typically represent different things that are going on. So I'm going to cookie cutter it a little bit for you today, because again, everyone is specific based on what we're working on, and it may be slightly different for you. But what I found, although I had a ton of resistance to this work at the beginning, I was so resistant, guys, I did not believe any of this stuff was true until I started seeing real results in my life on a regular basis. So there is our neck, okay? So if you're someone who typically has a tight neck or shoulders, so our neck really has to do with perspective. Everything's a metaphor also in this space. So what I really love about it is I love metaphors, because it helps us really lock in information. So our neck typically represents perspective. So if you are someone who has a lot of neck tightness and pain, where are you blocking yourself from seeing the whole perspective, the whole picture, right? Again, we're doing kind of a general session today of what some of these pieces mean. And if you want to go deeper, you can do that. The shoulders, if you have really tense shoulders, it usually typically is a message that you are carrying too much weight. And I'm not talking about physical weight. Maybe you went to the gym and you pushed a little bit too much weight. Sure, that's great. But I'm talking about emotional weight, responsibility. You are holding too much. And this is something that a lot of us can take on, especially as women, as we can take on all these responsibilities. We can take on responsibilities to care for and make sure everyone else is good except for ourselves. So if you are experiencing a lot of tension in your shoulders, in your neck and shoulders, where are you not giving yourself more range of motion and perspective in a certain area of your life. And what might happen is you're listening to this right now, there might be something specific that comes up and you're like, oh, I need to go a little bit deeper with that. And that might be your cue to press pause on this and get your journal out and come back to it. With the shoulders, what responsibilities are you taking on that may not even be your responsibilities? Like, what are you taking on that maybe you can stop taking on, that you can delegate, that you can release, that you can let go of, right? I know for me, I am definitely someone who likes to get things done, and I used to have this belief system, and I still do to a certain extent, so I'm working on it, is if you want to get something done, do it yourself, because I'm a doer. I like to get things done. But sometimes, especially in business and life, like if I am responsible for everything, I need to do everything myself, that can feel like a lot of weight and energy just, being drained out of me. And if I can delegate or release it, or is this really important, and let it go and create boundaries, that just creates so much more freedom and space in my life, and can do that for you too. So the next part is the stomach. So stomach issues, if you are someone who has a lot of stomach issues, let's say, bloating and everything else, like you just got a lot of stomach issues. The stomach from this body of work typically represents what you are having a hard time digesting. Okay. So if you are someone who is feeling like, bloated and, there's not a lot of chi, there's not a lot of energy in your stomach, and, things are not moving the way you'd like them to, where are you having a hard time letting go? Where are you having a hard time releasing? What are you clinging to emotionally? And it's so interesting because, as I mentioned, a lot of this stuff I did not believe until I actually started seeing results in my life. And I was like, oh, like I have stomach issues because I am having a hard time digesting a lot of what's going on around me. I had a lot of stomach pain. And so my body, my soul, was trying to get me to slow down. I was go, 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 next. And I wasn't slowing down. I wasn't grounded. So my stomach was getting upset. I was super sensitive to a ton of foods. And it was because I wasn't allowing myself to digest different parts of my life, what was going on. I was constantly rushing. And it's interesting, actually, as I'm sharing this right now, because in that past relationship, that past marriage that I was in, when I was having all of these stomach issues, like, I would just get upset stomachs all the time. I couldn't eat a lot of different foods. I just felt sick all the time. I felt like I was always in a rush. Like I felt like I was always rushed. I was always like rushed to the next thing, get married, do this, do that. Like I never felt like in that relationship and at that time in my life, I had time to slow down and just be. It was always next, go, go, go. And it was almost like I could never catch up with what was next in my life and what was expected of me. So it was a lot, and it was showing up in my stomach. So if you're having stomach issues in that type of way, upset stomachs, it's like, where are you not digesting life? Where are you not pausing? Where are you not integrating? Right? So that's really important. And also, if you get upset stomachs a lot around certain people, there's probably something energetically going on with you that's just not feeling good. You're not really like, something isn't feeling right for you in your system when you're around that person. And oftentimes that can show up as stomach issues. It can show up as anxiety. Our stomach holds a lot of anxiety about the future, right? And so that anxiousness, those stomach issues can actually be a sign of anxiety, and I don't quite feel safe in this dynamic. So that can look like having a conversation with someone. That can look like slowing down, doing some journaling, and seeing what wants to come up for you. The next thing is our hips, okay? So the hips represent our power center. So oftentimes, if our hips are feeling tight and off, it's usually because there's something going, like not quite aligning with our power. If your hips are out of balance, it's usually there's some stuff that needs to be processed. And also our hips hold a lot of emotion. So if we can stretch, if we can release, if we can also tune into what's going on, what are we holding on to, that's draining us, then we can process and release and step into our authentic power. And what I love about that is when I was a yoga teacher years ago in my yoga career that I did for like 8 years, there was a time, I don't know exactly when, but all of a sudden I could start to see people's auras, and I saw different colors and different things that were going on in people's bodies. And it's so interesting because the hips, they hold so much emotion. And if we can actually release some of that energy in the hips through yoga and also through journaling and, the conscious mind and what we're creating and what we're doing, and having that self-awareness, we can have more clarity and move forward more powerfully when we have released emotions and things that are blocking us from showing up in our power. So hips, hip issues, tightness, all those things, emotions that are blocked, and also they're blocking you from really stepping into your power. All right, let's talk a little bit about the hands. So hand issues, typically have to do with giving and receiving, okay? So oftentimes when things are out of balance with giving and receiving, you might have some issues with your hands. And again, a lot of these things, especially that I never really understood. And then there was a time where I remember I was having a lot of cramps in one of my hands. And I remember just doing some work on tuning into what it was. And it was like I was not allowing people to, I was not good at receiving. I was giving, doing for so many people in my life at that time, but I wasn't allowing myself to receive. And it was almost uncomfortable to receive, like a lack of deserving. And then I realized that, and I started to consciously make some shifts. And then the hand cramps and the stuff went away. So really interesting stuff. The next thing are the knees. So the knees typically represent relationships. And you might be thinking right now, well, Dee, I was playing soccer and I tore my meniscus. Okay, you're playing soccer and you tore your meniscus. I'm not going to spiritually bypass anything that happens in the physical reality. I know there's a lot of spiritual teachers that will, and they'll be like, well, that's, you manifested this. Maybe, maybe not. I really like to balance both, like the spiritual side of what's going on, but also things also happen, right, in life. And sometimes there is a spiritual meaning behind what's happened in the physical world. And sometimes things just happen. So it's really in your hands and in your court to decide, go internal and ask yourself, is this true? Is this true for me? And go a little bit deeper than maybe you would normally go. So the knees represent relationships. If we have sore knees, if we have knee issues, a lot of the time we have relationship issues with the masculine and feminine, which could be very much connected to our mother and our father, and our mother wounds and our father wounds and all of those things. So something to feel into and see if it resonates for you. This was the part I really didn't believe, and then I did some deeper work on it. Again, what I'm going to be giving you in this freebie below this episode, in the show notes, and I was able to be like, oh, this is very much connected to a relationship piece that I didn't want to look at. So the knees, relationships. And then the last one we're going to be talking about today, actually, second last one, we have two more, is the feet. The feet are understanding. If you have issues in your feet, what are you not understanding? What are you bypassing potentially? Where are you feeling blocked? Where is there a disconnect for you? Okay. The legs are your ability to move forward. It's really interesting when I coach people and help them specifically with growing their business and stepping into their dreams. I get a lot of visions of my clients. And when I work with people, I can typically see physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, and spiritually what's in the way. It's almost like this energetic patterning that I see, and I'm like, oh, they need to do this. This is what they need to let go of. I can just see how everything connects. And so with that, what I was going to say is, because I get these visions of my clients and the people around me of like what's actually going on versus potentially what they consciously see or what they think that they need to do and all of that, I'm able to get a lot of information. And so for me, one of the things that happens a lot of the time in coaching sessions with my clients is I'm able to feel, first of all, what's going on in their physical body. I'm like, oh, this person has a heartbreak that they're going through, that they're not potentially sharing with me, and it's causing them to XYZ. Oh, they're feeling, like they can't do X because of Z. So I'll just get all this information. But specifically around the legs, this is what I really truly wanted to share, is that when I'm talking to someone and something comes through, either I say it out loud or they say it out loud, something that they want to do or they're thinking about, when it's really important, when it's like super, super important on a soul level for them to take massive inspired action on it and move forward, my legs go super, super tingly. It's like this hit of they need to move this forward. This is very, very important. So the way I am as an intuitive is I see things, I hear things, I know them, and I feel them. So it's really interesting because for a long time in my life, when I would work with people, I'd be like, oh, why do I feel sad? Why do I feel this? Why do I feel that? And it was actually because I'm feeling exactly what's going on inside of people's bodies. And that's been really such a beautiful gift. But for a long time in my life, it was very confusing. So the legs are a representation of moving forward. When I get tingles in my legs, it's like, oh, they need to move this forward, or oh, I need to move this forward. It's very, very important. So those are some of the ways that your soul may be communicating to you right now, is through different symptoms as well as depression, dis-ease, and all of these things. And the most incredible thing about our soul and our body and all of this is it's trying to get us on path. It's always trying to get us on path for our greater good, for who we are meant to be. And sometimes it will do that through disease. Sometimes it will do that through pain. Sometimes it will do that through knocking us out of the game for a little bit, the game of life for a little bit, so that we can learn a lesson and start again. And so if you are someone who is wanting to go deeper into this work of the language of the soul, or you're wanting guidance in this arena, feel free to go to the freebie below where you can actually access a process and go through potentially something that's going on in your life right now, get the higher message, and then take massive inspired action. And this is also another thing I want to share on for a moment. So with intuition, with your soul, okay, your soul is really about your truth. It's about doing the thing that's you are called to do. And one of the things that I was really called to do was launch the show, and also the space of awakening, helping people with business. But also one of the reasons behind the launch of this specific show is for me to bring my spiritual gifts more outwardly to support people like you, because I know that these gifts are here to be shared, and it's not something that I share outside of the containers that I facilitate in. So really, I feel really good about sharing this episode specifically on the language of the soul, how you can start to decode it and get more in tune with yourself. But the most important thing, this is what I want to share, is with your soul. If it gives you a message, it's important to listen, because if we don't listen, the message usually gets louder, and we don't get to choose how the message shows up. Sometimes it'll be like pain, 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 pain. And it's like, oh, I want this to go away. Well, what are you avoiding? What are you not looking at? What do you not want to get honest with yourself with? This is a messenger from yourself, your soul, that's like, hey, Jessica. Hey, Deidre. Hey, Selena. Hey, I want to get your attention. Pay attention. And the better you become at listening to the soul, the more you are going to be able to receive the gifts that life has to offer. Because like I mentioned, I had chronic pain. I had 4 autoimmune diseases. I had depression. I had anxiety attacks. I had major food sensitivities. And as soon as I implemented this work, and I went deep into it and I took massive inspired action in my life, those symptoms went away. And this is something that may be available to you too. And as I mentioned, it's not just about the spiritual side, it's also about the physical world and also our physical health. So I hope that this episode has been of value to you and maybe a puzzle piece that you are missing. And again, if you'd like to jump into my free offering below on the language of the soul process, feel free to do that. And if you love this episode, please go ahead and comment, share, and write a review. If you write a review for this show and you take a screenshot and you send it over to hello@radicallyaligned